Welcome. We are your hosts. I am Nicholas Wilson.
And this is Cynthia Calory.
And this is the podcast.
This could go either way. So we're glad to have you here today. I don't even know, are we going to call this our second or third episode?
I don't know. It's going to be the second one we post.
Yes, it is. That is true.
Really work out
last one we kind of messed that up. That's okay. That's all part of learning.
Part of learning, right? We're figuring it out.
So today we're going to start. We picked a topic and we got ready for it. But it was kind of interesting how it all came about because I think you and I were out to breakfast, lunch, something. And you told me about this. So you want to tell everyone that's listening how we came about this book we're going to talk about today?
Well, I just had a coworker. We were chatting at work and just talking about how, kind of feels like we're making things worse for ourselves, just, with society in general, and how much dissatisfaction and all this other kind of stuff. And she says, well, that sounds a lot like a book I'm reading. It's called Coddling of the American Mind.
Yes.
And so she suggested I read it. It was very good, so I suggested it to you as well.
Yes, and I don't know what made me want to listen to it, but I'm a subscriber to many different forms of listening to books, and one of my favorite ones is the free version, where it's called Libby. It's like basically the library here, and you can rent books for free. So I found it on there. I was like, sweet, I don't even have to pay for this. But I will say it would be worth having to pay for, because after listening
I paid for it.
Yeah, okay. See, there you go.
So if the authors are listening,
yes.
I did pay for the book.
I use Libby and made sure, so it's here.
I guess that's technically a paid-for copy.
I mean, it is technically a paid-for copy, so this is the Libby that I use. But it's by the authors Greg Lukianoff and Jonathan Haidt. I hope I'm saying the names correctly. But the title, yes, The Coddling of the American Mind, How Good Intentions and Bad Ideas Are Setting Up a Generation for Failure. Quite a title.
Yeah, so it's certainly kind of an in-your-face title, I think. So the background, a little background on the book. They apparently had written an article for The Atlantic, I believe, by the same title. And then they kind of realized there was a lot of response to it, so they realized there was a lot for the book. So I think one of them has a background in psychology, and the other one is a background in ancient wisdom, or I can't remember specifically what. Stoicism, maybe, was it? Or at least how he listed his background.
Yeah, I don't recall.
But either way, so they take concepts of psychology, primarily CBT, and then what we've learned throughout the ages, what they refer to as ancient wisdom, and that basically we are doing the opposite of everything we know to be the right thing to do when it comes to dealing with emotions and trauma. And it's really kind of came about with Gen Z, and they originally noticed the issue, or at least the one of them noticed the issue in 2013, kind of being I think it was either the first graduating class or the year they first started.
Yes, that was going to be the year the Generation Z was going into college.
All right, so yes. that was when they were starting.
I'm almost positive.
All right, so yeah. You want to take it from there?
Yeah, so the book. It's super cute because they tell like a little bit of a fable, like a little.
They make it through a little story.
Yeah, a little parable story.
Parable,
yes,
that's the right word. Yeah.
And they go and see this, guy that's supposed to be of ancient wisdom. They travel somewhere, climb a mountain, right? And he speaks of the truths, but it turns the three truths that everyone should live by. But it turns out all the three truths that he named were. Every time they were like, that's not right. And it turns out it was just, again, a parable. And the theme of the book is the three untruths. and I'll go ahead and read them out.
Yeah.
So we have what we're going to be talking about today that I found just fascinating. The first is the untruth of fragility. What doesn't kill you makes you weaker. And if you heard that, like I heard it the first time, I was like, well, that's not right.
At least that's not what we've known
Yes.
to be the saying
Yes,
over the
exactly.
years. Right? That's kind of the point, right?
Yes.
It's not necessarily about right or wrong in this context, just that that's not consistent.
Yes, there you go. Thank you for that. The number 2 is the untruth of emotional reasoning. Always trust your feelings, which I appreciate that one because that definitely touches on my experience with the CBT, the cognitive behavioral therapy.
Well, yeah, it's very specifically what CBT is all about,
Yes,
right? I
yes.
think that's one of the harder ones of the untruths too for people to really deal with. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And then the third is the untruth of us versus them. Life is a battle between good people and evil people. Which we're going to dive into. So, but let's just talk about what doesn't kill you makes you weaker, and how this came about.
Yeah, we can talk about just kind of the context of what they're talking about in the book. Where it really comes from is the idea of all these safe spaces and trigger warnings, and specifically why that's bad is that like if you were recovering from a trauma, immersion therapy would be something that they would possibly suggest because avoidance is a symptom of PTSD.
Yes.
And so trigger warnings lead to avoidance, and then safe spaces lead to avoidance because you're actively avoiding the issue instead of figuring out a way to deal with that trauma or what have you, right?
Yes. They give reference to, basically in the book, which we highly to listen to or go read. It's definitely worth the time. And I do want to point out too, as we get into this, as a little side note, that it is about the generation of children and talking about, how to become aware of these things and how to figure out to move away from it to get better from it. I myself come from the aspect, I don't have children, but just from the viewpoint of seeing what's happening on the college campuses and what's happening to the current, the Generation Z. I think it's just, it's a scary thing for sure. And I mean, I imagine you're coming from another point of you have kids, but they're younger, and a little bit of, I thought about you a lot because I was I worry. I'm like, you worry what the future is going to hold because of if this is going to get addressed properly or not.
It's and how to deal with it, right? Like it was a good read having young kids because, how often do any of us talk about it's like, well, when I was a kid, I was able to do this, or we did this. And that's true, and that's what a lot of what the book's about, is that in a lot of ways the younger generation is weaker than the generation before it, but that's also part of the goal, right? Is that to make your children have an easier life than you. That's always kind of been the goal, right? And that's what a lot of times they said, we're technically old millennials.
Yes.
And we would be the first generation that does not have it better than their parents.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where just a lot of it kind of came from.
Yes. So in the book, the reason I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention, but in the book, they give a lot of reference, which about what these events that would happen on campus and the response of the universities. And where it's just been scary because the universities, what is the saying? I made a note here: prepare the child for the road, not the road for the child. And and unfortunately, seems like what's happening is that every time the students at the university all of a sudden didn't feel safe, and they didn't feel they felt like they weren't included, or they felt segregated from what was happening, that they would bring it to the attention of the university, and instead of the university and the professors and trying to help them see these are good emotions, this is what you're supposed to feel, to kind of figure out what your opinion is, what your perspective is. But instead, it seems like there's just been this big thing of the universities just going, oh, okay, well, hold on, we got to be safe here. We better be careful. Hold on, let's just change this. You can't say that. Nobody do this. They even gave, I think for this part, they gave the reference about how a school cut out like nothing with nuts, about the peanut butter, the peanut allergy.
Story, right?
Yes,
Basically, So and then this was they were referencing a specific school, but the issue was not, they weren't talking about the specific school that like a study was done already.
Yes,
but
right.
But they were talking about how when there was the big scare of peanut allergies, then everything was just getting rid of peanuts. No peanuts anywhere. No peanuts, no peanuts, no peanuts. And then it turned out that they did a study and that the lack of exposure to peanuts actually increased the rate of allergies. So it's, it's a tough balance as a parent, right? Like, and then, like, I mean, we're just constantly off topic here, but this makes sense. Like, just even today, like, even as a parent, like, some things you're just not allowed to do anymore. Like, I technically did something I'm pretty sure is illegal in the state of California. Like, I had to pick up that connector today, and I ordered it to be ready for pickup online, right? So it was just going to be in and out real quick, right? So I left Penny and Fox in the car because he was asleep. And it couldn't have been 5 minutes, but, Penny's under 9, so, I think that's technically illegal.
Yeah, probably.
In California.
Which
at least
is,
in California,
Again, us growing up, it's ridiculous, really, because...
Oh, my dad would leave me in the car, would run into the liquor store all the time, because in Indiana, minors couldn't be in the liquor store at all.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
Like here, where you can bring them in with you, but...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember my mom would go do errands, and I'd just sit in the car, and I'd just rather just not be with whatever the heck she had to do, and I remember sitting in the car. Same with my friends' parents. Gosh, we got left alone all the time. I remember roaming neighborhoods, going, like... miles away on a bike, and
these aren't situations we're not talking about we got left and forgotten about in a car.
No,
right? Because those are the situations where bad shit happens.
Yeah, of course,
right? And so then the overreaction, the overcorrection, right? I mean, it's comes from a good place, right? Less kids dying in hot cars.
Yeah.
Who's against that?
Yeah, nobody. Right? Nobody.
But. The overcorrection is, it's like, so now it's like you have to be, one of the things that I can't remember which state they listed, but that you had to be like 16 or something before you could be like alone, which is ridiculous.
I think it was ridiculous.
Like I had my first job, even the context of this book was still kind of old, was like, I think like 13, I had a paper route. Yeah. So I was getting up on my own, super early, and then like wrapping up all these papers, and then getting on a bike like 4 a.m. and driving to some neighborhood in the dark, because I didn't get to deliver in my neighborhood, so I had to ride my bike to another neighborhood and deliver these papers. Like that would be illegal, in some areas, and so that's what it comes down to is we create these environments, so that's what these kids have been growing up in. And then they go off to college, and they've never really had to experience, a lot of the social issues.
Yeah, and so there's this whole concept of that the safetyism, like somewhere along the lines, it's turned into because I feel uncomfortable, I don't feel safe. Which means if I don't feel safe, I'm in danger. So ergo, because I feel uncomfortable, I'm in danger. There's also the intention, like when they talk about the email from the dean of one of the schools that was responding to an article a student wrote about, they just felt like they were left out, and the dean responded, but just because of one word, because she used the word mold, I believe it was, that the student decided to make a huge deal out of it instead of the practicing. I wrote this down because I liked it. It was called the principle of charity, of people should interpret statements in their best and most reasonable form, not their worst and most offensive way possible.
Give people the benefit of the doubt.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So
trust the whole, at least try to believe that people's intentions aren't bad.
Yeah.
On the get-go.
Yeah. But but then what's scary is because of social media, I guess she posted it on Facebook, and she was like, feel free to share and comment, and everybody just took exactly what she said and instead of anybody challenging it or trying to have a discussion or debate or try to
like
see
to shame.
Well, yeah, it's because we're in this such like shaming cancel culture.
Let's be real though. The desire and the enjoyment that society has gotten out of shaming people within. That's ancient. Right?
I know,
like
it's
public executions and the like. So it's
the Gladiator movie. It makes you think of that.
Yeah, it's essentially
that.
It's our instinct to get on that bandwagon of shame.
The tribalism.
Yeah.
Yes. That
because that even reminds me of it was. I heard about it on John Oliver last week tonight. He talked about it. Basically, the story was this girl. She worked at a Chipotle, and these young men kept coming in, and they would order like a bunch of food, and they'd get to the end because Chipotle works. You go in, you pick your stuff, and then you go pay, right? And then they wouldn't pay, so they'd come in several times. So then they come in one time, and then they have their phones out, and so they happen to be recording. And when they get to the counter, they're like, you guys are gonna have to pay first. That's what they were told when they got there. Of course, the girl at the counter is white, and those young men were black, and so then they shame her online, and then comes the shame bandwagon because which is easy to do. We're all. I think it's easy to be a little sanctimonious about it, but we're all guilty of it.
It's some at one point or another.
To an
that's
extent,
true.
right?
Yes.
Because it's easy, it's emotional, right? Mm-hmm. And that goes into the whole idea of always trust your feelings,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
So because emotions make us react, and it's they're survival instincts, right?
Yes.
So it's it's our nature to, believe them because they're internal and they're technically there to keep us alive,
yes,
right?
it's.
You at least I'm not a biologist, but that would be my assumption that is the
purpose of them. But also a form of evolution and just overall like mindfulness and awareness, which has been being also studied and practiced for millennia,
right?
Of being aware of these things when they happen and questioning them because we have the ability to. We're not animals, we are, but we have that ability to go, whoa, let's step back, let's really look at this. And it just always reminded me, I actually have been through actual CBT with a licensed cognitive behavioral therapist, and one of my favorite tools, just when talking about always trust your feelings, that untruth of when you're in that moment and you have that feeling and it seems like it's end all be all, that has to be the truth. A great tool is if you were in front of a judge and a jury and you had to defend yourself from going to prison or being sentenced, and you had to defend why that truth was actually not true, could you do it to save your own life? And it's so, I know it seems dramatic, but when you get hit with that, you go, okay, hold on, let's look at this again. It just at least gives you that moment to go, wait a minute, let me assess this. Am I blowing it up, or is this right, or is this legitimate?
Thinking about how our emotions are reactionary,
yes.
and that they may not be logical.
Yes, yeah.
Right, and focusing on that because their emotions are about survival, right? So they need to be more extreme to get us to act in a survival way.
But this is why I agree, but it's instinctual, but it's so confusing that it's like they've been handed this get out of free jail card, or go to I don't know why I'm using Monopoly all of a sudden, but like the go and collect the $200 at the Go thing or whatever. I forgot. Well, you know what I'm talking about. But the point is,
with it,
yes, yeah. Sticking with it. I won't let go of the Monopoly thing. But the point is, it's like they're looking for a reason to be offended. They're looking for the one thing, because it's like they've already made up their mind, and that's that. It's like, why are they being taught this? Where is this? It
seems like
from?
There's some level of
why are they so angry
social contest. To be. I think that's that's the whole concept of virtue signaling, right? you have to, and they talk about that in the book too. Like it's almost becomes like somewhat of a competition of, you know, calling each other out.
Yeah.
Right. I think they even had a term for that. You know, it's not cancel culture, it's call out culture.
Yes, that's what they called it. Call out
culture. Because ultimately, you know, as far as cancel culture goes, like ultimately cancel culture is still free speech. I know a lot of people do like to decry cancel culture, but it's just all they're really decrying is being told by somebody that they didn't like what they had to say.
Yeah.
You know, so ultimately you're saying your free speech should be protected by canceling somebody else's free speech. But you know, the idea that it's, you know, it just becomes about calling them out as opposed to, you know, making a point.
Yes.
Right. And or understanding their point. Right. It's like, how do you have a conversation? You know, and this kind of ties into the other truth, right? Like, it's like, how do you have a conversation with somebody that you see as evil, right? You know, you can't compromise with the devil.
Yeah.
Right? So then it's, how do you ever come back when the other side's painted as just the epitome of everything that's terrible? I mean, like, look at QAnon. You know, like, yeah, no shit, they're angry. You know, like, if you honestly believe that there's a bunch of people murdering children to drink their blood to have the excess adrenaline in there, you know, like, that's fucked up.
Yeah.
You know, like,
yeah.
You know, if you really believe that, I would be a little worried about it if you weren't outraged.
Yeah, exactly. And going into the us versus them, another, I think it's how they start that whole chapter or that part of the book. It's not the external events themselves, but the way in which we think about them. And it's not the things that disturb us, but our interpretation of their significance, right? And it's so true. It's just interesting that, you know, that it's like the mind just shuts down. Because listening to these stories, which again, I cannot emphasize that you really should listen and read this book. I was getting emotional and passionate and cussing in the car and listening to it on my runs when I was running, because I'm listening to it when I'm running, and I'm just getting one of my best miles listening to this book. Anyway, but because it was just outrageous, like what they were doing to the like the deans and the administration of the schools at these universities, where the students in this uproar and these people that worked at the universities, that were the heads of the universities, were apologizing.
They're supporting right?
They themselves, like they were talking about how they would apologize. They used the incorrect words. They were trying to be respectful and empathetic of what their students were feeling. But this whole mass of people would be, well, it's not enough. You don't listen.
And they're already reinforcing the negative concept to begin with, right? Instead of trying to
stand up to what they said.
They're like, look, you know, you don't have to go listen to this person speak.
Yeah.
You know,
go to your dorm.
We're we're not, you know, we give platforms equally to all who pay the fucking fee.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what, it's all comes down to money, honestly.
Yeah. But that should be what it. Well, that's so weird, because we talked about this earlier. I wanted to bring it in there, but you know, when we're talking about how, because this is a good time, that the administration treats the student body now is different, right? Like,
oh yeah, it's so like a resort. They're staying there instead of getting an education. Really the
commodity at this point. So because I was watching Bill Maher this weekend, they were somebody on there was talking about, like, it's the university's product is no longer education.
Correct.
It's an experience.
It's experience. It's
right.
Make this place feel like home.
Right, and it's so they're not necessarily selling. Even more so, it's almost like the students themselves are the commodity, right? Like, it's not about, you're not so much concerned about the quality of the degree that the university itself isn't necessarily concerned with the quality of their degrees, right? Because a lot of times they're rated not on the quality of education they provide, but about the ratio of acceptance to applications, right? Like, isn't that how the whole, like, USA Today ranking, or I think it was USA Today or whatever that original ranking system was, led to the whole, USC and all that kind of stuff, right? And it's turned everything into, it's about making money, right? The universities are about making money, and they're talking about this too. Like, and they talk about this in the book. They're talking about this in the show.
Yeah, they do.
It's primarily
it's like it's a corporation now.
Well, it used to be run by professors, and now it's run by administrators. And so that every time there's an issue, there's a new administrator to run up that, the department that's going to handle that issue. And so it's like and now they have to pay these administrators. So then it costs even more. And so then people are paying more. So then now you need to make that experience valuable to its cost. And it just becomes this, self-fulfilling issue, essentially.
Yeah, they're feeding into their own issue, the problems that they're creating. And and that's where I was just astounded. Because, I was thinking, in my mind, if it was actually not about money, but actually about the quality of the education a student was getting, and truly what they did with it after, if they were able to become successful and live in this world, and succeed and be a healthy individual, contributing to the economy and society. But they're not graded like that. But I was just astounded that when these things were happening to these administrators, the heads of the school, that there was no backup given, like, at all, any support, because there was it was too risky, is I guess what they were saying. That and what I was thinking, and I just want to say this because I was like, if this was going down, like, in my mind, I can only imagine one. I can only imagine what they were going through, what they felt like, but I'd be like, you know what, you little shits? How about fuck you? Sorry, I'm going here, but I was thinking this. I was like, fuck you. How about I don't teach you? What are you going to do? What if all the professors at a university just
went on
strike? Well, then why are you fucking showing up there? So, sorry, Siri got upset about that.
Well, he talks about, I think, do they mention University of Chicago in the book?
They do, about where fun goes to die or something like that.
Well, they talk about, this university is like, no, we're about education, we're about freedom of thought, like, we're not going to cave in to demands of a few.
Good.
It was just something else I was reading, like, I was on Bill Maher again, but I can't remember exactly what it was, but it's basically somebody found something they could construe as offensive, and so they created, like, a petition, and the response was, we don't make decisions based off of petitions. Like, that's a good response.
Yes.
Because I think that's, like, ultimately the issue with cancel or call out culture, whatever, isn't the people voicing their opinions of dissatisfaction. It is the people that support it and take action because of the feelings of a few, right? Like, so it's the corporations that don't support their talent or don't support the people underneath them. Let's, like, as an example, like Roseanne.
Oh yeah, what happened to her?
To be fair, I feel like she should have realized that ABC was probably going to be a little more strict and how they want to be represented or whatever, but they should have also known who they were getting into business with.
Yeah, like, what were the expectations set when all that happened?
Well, she is who she is, and she has never been afraid of being who she is, and so there's no way they didn't know who she was. Yeah. So she wasn't tying it to the show. She wasn't tying it to the network. She wasn't acting as a representative of the network. She worked for them, right? And so that, there needs to be some separation for that, right? Like, it should be what I do in my private time, my private life, as long as I'm not associating it with the organization that employs me. Should I be accountable? I mean, I don't know. I'll be honest, I sometimes go back and forth because at the same time I feel like, just because there's consequences for what you say, isn't necessarily a reason to be all upset. I think it's tough to balance, the newness of social media and the fact that, things like Twitter where you're streaming like a stream of conscious kind of thing. I don't think you should be free from backlash. But I guess ultimately my point is is where we lay the blame of cancel culture. I think ultimately it lies on the companies. It's fair if they don't want to be, if they feel like somebody is a representative of them and they don't want to be represented that way. Like, I get it, I don't know. I think it's
Well,
a tough
no,
balance. I think I contradicted my own point there.
No, I know what you mean. Well, it's okay. If you're gonna, they're calling it cancel culture, call out culture. The key word there is culture, because, and then the root word of that is cult, which we're like the book talks about. We're tribalists. We're tribal. Like tribalism is just in our nature.
Oh, that's what I want to say too. Like, so just
go ahead.
tying into that,
because
you had mentioned before, like. We talked about it being almost like a competition, right?
Yeah.
And that becomes part of like the tribalism, right? Mm-hmm. Like affirming yourself to your tribe, mm-hmm. right? So that's I just wanted to tie that in. So that's where like a lot of that goes hand in hand. Right?
Yes. And that's where, the reason that culture seems to keep winning in these scenarios is because they're all getting together. There's that groupthink happening very quickly, and if you're not with them, you're against them, right? And if you then look at the culture of a company, or in this case, we're talking about the universities, their culture is clearly shit, and they don't have one because there's no stick-to-itiveness. That's the problem. Like, if you're not gonna solve the problem of dealing with that happening in universities until the university and everything they stand for is really reassessed and like, hey, what's our culture? What's our why? What are we trying to accomplish here? Because these kids, even though these kids are doing this to us, that's not going to serve anything in the future, which is why I like this book. So truly, if a university is just going to be in business or what exist, it needs to have a culture behind that. And I feel like that's gone away. Even since like we went to school, like I never like protests and those things happen, but I never felt like that group thing. Now, did you want to belong? Yeah, you found your friends, you found the things you were interested in, and you did those things. You kind of stayed away from the things you didn't want to, and everything was just kosher. And I feel like that's how it was. Well,
so this is for them too, is this need to belong, right? Like, yeah. But isn't that kind of like the human experience?
Well, yes, right? Yes, absolutely.
Trying to figure out where you fit in, where you fit in culture. It's like, I don't want to get too specific about what specific issues, because would be for another, that'll consume the topic. But
yes.
If it's to the point where we shouldn't be trying to change society to accept us.
Yeah.
Right. We want society should tolerate. Right. This is actually South Park wisdom right here. Just for anybody that's curious, but tolerance is what we want.
Yes.
Acceptance is not necessarily a guarantee, right? Like,
yeah.
We don't have, the beauty of living in a free society is that I need to tolerate your existence, and you should be allowed to exist as you want to exist. Mm-hmm. But I also deserve the same.
Yeah.
So we don't have to accept the right or wrongness of how someone else exists, but we need to be willing to tolerate their existence, right? So it's like the ideas back in the day when, like there'd be like KKK or neo-Nazi marches, and then, the minority groups there was always a story, I don't even know how true this is, but like of one of those events happening, and then there are people trying to shut him down. It was a Jewish person that stepped in and said, the thing is here, you need to let them speak, because it's about freedom of speech. We can't. If we want to have the freedom, then we have to allow it to exist for somebody else.
Yeah.
Right? It has to go both ways. And we may have to accept things, or tolerate things that we dislike, but we don't have to accept them.
Yeah.
But people need to be able to exist in their own right. And, I get that I don't understand what that's like for a lot of people. That a lot of people have felt that they are not tolerated.
Yes.
But I personally just don't think the answer is to try to destroy the other side.
Yeah, retaliate with violence and discrimination, and it's like it seems like, well, this is how I feel, so this is how you should feel. So you need to know how I feel. Right, which again, it's like you can't.
It's like the effort for equality is not really. Sometimes I don't feel like the real, like a lot of the equity and the equality movement really isn't about equality. It's about getting ahead, which which is, inherently, I don't have a problem with that. this is America, right? Like, everybody's trying to get ahead.
Yeah.
And you want your group to be on top. Like, I get that. There's nothing wrong with that. But don't try to pretend that it's about tolerance. That it's about equality. Because if it's all things equal, then I still get to exist at the same level. Double standards are not equal. Even if you feel the other side has been at the advantage, equality is not putting the other side at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
It's bringing us to the same level. And why that has to always be, I think too often that's viewed as bringing one side down instead of just lifting the other side up. But I mean,
because
again,
that's actually harder to do. But it's truly the more
talk is cheap. It's easy to do.
Yes, it's more. It is easier to what's that? I hope this kind of fits. It keeps coming to me, so maybe I'm right. It could not fit, but it's like the whole: don't run away from what you don't want. Run towards what you do want. And
right,
and what? So what? When you're feeling marginalized and you're feeling segregated, or you're having those things, well, what do you really want?
Right, it's dress for
really,
success,
you gotta,
right? Dress for the job you want, right? Because I think this is a good analogy. Like, so it's become to the point where it used to be like, all right, you want to be part of that world, then you need to make yourself look like part of that world.
If that's what you truly are wanting.
If that's what you want.
Have you sat back and said,
if you want to be with them,
yes,
then you need to adopt their way.
Right.
Right? But now it seems like it's like, well, I want to be part of your group, so you have to do things like me.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, wait a minute. So then if you're wanting your own following, so you feel that you're being accepted, then why are you going after the others that you are just interpreting aren't accepting you, instead of making a little movement and just finding other people that want to have the same thing you do without having to hurt, become violent, discriminate? Like, why does it have to all of a sudden go out there, when why couldn't you just do, all right, why don't you sit down and go, all right, I'm feeling this way. Well, let's assess this really quick. So if I feel this way now because I don't feel accepted, I don't feel like I fit the mold, then sit back. Why is it so bad to go, okay, well then what do I want? How would I like to feel? What am I trying to accomplish? Where's this feeling taking me? Instead of just being so reactive. And that's where these things, I don't know where this starts, but these things need to be talked about and taught. And
I think a lot of the solution seems somewhat counterintuitive, right? So like, because we're talking about avoiding tribalism, but at the same time we're saying, find your group.
Right. Which,
so
we're not saying, even in the book, it doesn't say avoid tribalism. It's just pointing out that's...
We're trying, I think as a society, we should have a goal of essentially avoiding tribalism, right? Like, you can have your own groups without being tribal.
Well, okay, fair. Okay, so because part of it is like the tribalism aspect is you get with your other people to prepare to have the interconflict with other groups. It's like,
right, it's about fighting.
Yeah, that is. It is.
About fighting.
That is true. That is true.
So it's we can be different.
Yes.
Without being tribes, right? Like without having to battle each other.
Yeah.
Right. That's where it comes from the tolerance. Like we can have our own groups, and it's good to find a place to belong. Right. Everybody needs that.
Yes. It's just our nature. I agree.
And I think the problem is
we're social creatures.
Is the very real reality that our overconnectedness has made us more disconnected. Right?
Yeah, because especially when it's so easy to get on any social media platform, and if you don't really take the time about who you're following and what structure you're creating. Even me, I try to take a lot of time about what I'm following on Instagram and what I'm trying to avoid, and I ask it to hide, and I do that on Facebook, and even trying to shape it and mold it to the best of my ability. But even then,
isn't that part of the problem though too? Isn't that the essence of how the algorithm itself has corrupted society?
That's fair, but I just say, well, maybe
you in your bubble, right?
It's keeping me in my bubble, but I'm not dissing anybody. I'm just like, hey, just keep your crap over there. I'm gonna be over here with how I want to live, and I'm okay with that. And
I would say you do need to expose yourself.
I
do.
I do.
I'm not saying you personally.
Oh, I know. Yes, I'm not trying to complete
you create this Instagram bubble,
social media bubble,
or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Whatever.
Yes.
I mean, that's why I got away from social media, because I was, it's just too emotional, right? And you get stuck into it, and then the algorithm kind of takes you in, right?
Yeah.
And you just keep seeing more of the same stuff, the stuff you like, you're interested in, or more likely is it's the stuff that outrages you.
Because that causes...
Because you stay engaged with it longer, and so then you see more stuff that outrages you. And you get that vicious cycle, right? And that's what the tribalism comes in, is that the other side is more and more terrible each go-round, because
All right, I figured it out. I know the solution. I've got the solution, everyone. All we have to do is start teaching children nothing but human behavioral... just human behavior in general, and just study it from the get-go so you understand what's happening with you and everybody around you.
Isn't that kind of what they talked about in the book, that's how school kind of was more so before, especially the younger years? They taught, they give the example of it was like some time in the 70s or whatever, the requirements to be in first grade.
Oh yeah, when they talk about
versus now.
Oh my gosh, that is scary, the drastic
difference. The difference, and so and then they talk about how like rich kids are statistically ultimately less prepared for the world. Yeah. Because they have
overparenting. There's
and it seems to be more about the academic rigors, right? That it's
the academics
so
versus the free play. Yes, that
not
part
not to like, of course academics are very important, but it's when are they really important? And then we get, their argument is that there really shouldn't be a lot of academics in like kindergarten.
Yeah, no.
And it should be all social skills, right? But now it's a lot of academics, and so then you're missing out on the social skills, and so there, it tends to be the richer you are, the desire to ensure that your kid has a bright future and that they're doing well and they're getting ahead. So you spend your resources to, help that. Like it's obviously that's, what the vast majority of parents try to do their best by their children, right? And so, instinctively provide him with all the best education, best whatever, but then they end up not having time to socialize. Yeah. And then you combine that with how socialization works now. It makes sense.
It makes sense why this poor Generation Z is not ready for, they talk about that they feel because these newer generations are growing up slower. They don't have the social skills. They don't have the time to get to know who they are, start forming somewhat of an identity.
And this is very much an American problem too, right? Like this is.
I don't care about the rest of the world.
Well, yeah, fair enough. But, we've just set ourselves up for, with good intent, set ourselves up for a society that is more fragile, that can't take a joke. And that sees, they shouldn't have to face anything terrible. I mean, like,
how is somebody from that generation going to eventually be president of the United States? Because they will. One person.
It could. I mean,
that's going to be scary.
It could easily skip a generation. Like it could be. Think about how.
Yeah, they'll probably be too scared and offended to run for president. They won't even get that far because won't be able to handle it.
It went from Bush Senior to Bush Junior. Skip the generation in between.
Yeah, that's true.
We'll have a millennial president, and then Gen AA president. I don't know what comes
whatever.
after Z.
I have no idea what comes after Z. There is a name for it already, but
yeah, it's when my kids are in, I guess.
Yeah,
but.
I know I've heard of it. I can't think of it right now.
So while we're on that topic, let's be clear that millennial generation is not the problem.
Correct. We're the Spice Girl generation.
And it's not the boomers.
No.
That raised the problem generation. That would be Gen X. Yeah.
If you were born...
Not trying to throw any blame around.
Well, I mean, anybody that had a child at 1995 or later... Or actually in 1995. Basically, if you had a kid, it seems like in 1995, you were the problem.
Well, yeah, it's when Gen Z kind of...
Yeah, exactly. That's where it starts at. Yeah. Sorry, everybody that's listening, but you know what's up. And you probably know what you've been dealing with.
But some people would consider that to be kind of the younger end of the millennial generation. But,
Well, it's just... I'm uber grateful that I was born when I was. Not because I appreciate my age, but just because we grew up without the internet.
I'm glad that I grew up without everything being video recorded.
Oh my gosh, if our youth, when we were in college, was all over the internet, we'd be in trouble.
Yeah,
So
man, there is something to be said for knowing that your stupid shit can die. You know, like,
yeah, it dies with the past.
It's not forever somewhere on the internet to be stirred up later on. That's why I'm glad, never got into Twitter or any of that stuff. So there's no chance of old tweets surfacing. I don't think I've ever said anything real terrible on Facebook back in the day. I did get in a lot of arguments with conspiracy theorists on Instagram for a while.
That's just fun, though.
That might be considered a little troll.
I mean, if you don't... Who hasn't trolled on something somewhere on social media? And if you're saying you haven't, then you're part of the problem. So we all have done it. And actually, even when it was happening, I didn't know that's what I was doing until I just was like, now I had that, I just remember being like, I have an icky feeling. I'm going to stop doing this instead of going, I'm outraged that you're making me feel this way because I'm doing this thing.
You're
making me do, and then it makes me feel this way.
You were like, ha, he doesn't have anything to say to that.
Oh my gosh. In some AOL chat rooms. That was probably the last time I was really trolling.
Some stupid Facebook argument.
I did get in some arguments with Trump supporters during the pandemic when all that shit was going down, just for a second, because I literally was like not working for a month. Now I know a lot of people didn't work for a long time, but I was only really off for like a month, so I was like sucked in, and I'm really glad I got out of that quickly. But anyway, so it's also just, I will say those things don't feel good to me. I never felt like those. Like, it was inherently going like
losing battle.
Yeah, it's just, where is this getting anybody? I mean, and that's the big thing. It's just I would just hope that even if you don't read the book or listen to it, at least from listening to this, just get the sense of, you just stop and assess, be aware.
And there are people out there that are interested in having reasonable conversations for the, interested in learning about what other people have to say.
Yeah, Nick is one of them. He's really good about it. I try to live by the philosophy, open to everything, attached to nothing. That's kind of my philosophy, I
mean, I'm pretty opinionated, but I try to listen. Like, I'll get in an argument, it might get heated, but I will go home and I will think about everything that person said, and, sometimes you think about it and it changes your mind. Sometimes, sometimes you have to be willing to not worry about winning the argument and be willing to reflect on it a bit afterwards, right? Because it's okay to, I've played plenty of heated arguments and we're still friends with those people and able to come back and talk again. Yeah. And take some consideration for even the people that don't agree with you. Like, I mean, I don't classify myself as a liberal or conservative. I'm pretty sure all conservatives would consider me a liberal, but I don't necessarily subscribe specifically to any ideology. Issue by issue, I have what I believe about the issue. I personally think the whole words conservative and liberal have lost all meaning to begin with anyway. I kind of lost my train of thought on what the point I was trying to make was. Well, I was gonna say, I mean, I go out of my way to read stuff that would, that it's very conservative.
Yes.
I'll read the National Review, and I like it. They write well, and they bring up their points well. Yeah. Whether I agree or not. Yeah. It's something to think about.
It's how it's presented.
And I've always been a believer that you never really believe anything if you've never questioned it.
Yes.
Like you don't really know anything if you've never explored the opposite.
Yeah. Which leads me to philosophy number 2. You're allowed to change your mind. I always remind myself of that.
You should be willing to change your mind.
You should.
Right?
You're always allowed to change your mind, and you should keep that in mind about anything and everything in life. Your identity, your beliefs, your perspective, everything, just it's okay, and just be open to things now.
Well,
and
it's okay to be wrong.
Yes, and it's just
nobody knows everything.
did they? I don't know if I was listening, if it was this book or if it was something else I was listening to, but how they were talking about that it might have been the book, but where that moment of how you what you feel like the moment you realize you're wrong.
Right.
That right in that moment, right? Yeah, you're like, oh, and that's that
Especially
moment of
if you
change.
made like a real big fucking
Yeah,
deal.
it's exactly right. And now
It's shame, right? I mean, that's what the feeling's shame.
It's shame, but there's
that's what it is.
and there's vulnerability there. But just keep this in mind. If this is you and it's happened, or it might happen in the future, when you're in that moment of you realize you're wrong, just take a beat, sink into the shame just for a second. You don't have to be out for 2 weeks or anything. Just think about it. Realize that moment of shame is vulnerable. Now I'm getting into Brene Brown. But realize that moment is vulnerable. And from that place comes courage. Because if you can be courageous in that moment and go, hey, I was wrong. I'm going to admit it. I want to hear what you have to say. You know what I mean? Like that is a courageous little thing that you can do in that moment.
It's tough to do.
It is, but I'm just saying. But instead of because the other way, which I'm not perfect. I've been the other person that I know I'm wrong, and I just push through anyway, like an asshole. Because I want to save face. And that,
especially in the heat of the moment,
yes,
too, right? Like that's what I'm saying. Like that's why you need to go. You need to be willing to reflect afterwards, because in the heat of the moment, you're not going to change your mind right then.
No.
No one's going to change their mind.
And when your emotions are high,
of the argument, maybe if you're like arguing something that you can be slammed down, facts indisputable right in your face, but most people still are probably going to dig in. So that's because that's human nature, right? Nobody likes to be told they're wrong.
No, nobody
likes to be put down, and because that's where a lot of it comes from, is being wrong is you feel shame because there's ego involved, right? And so and then on the other side, people want to be right, and they're not always
it's fun
gracious.
To fucking gloat.
Yeah, right. We easily forget other people's humanity and our own in the instance, right?
Yeah. And that's why, again, I'm glad that you told me about this book, and I'm glad we made it a topic, because I just feel like it's a really good place to start, is just so you kind of understand where, we're coming from as hosts of this podcast.
It's about trying to understand.
Yeah,
and show a little empathy,
forbearance, compassion, and just grace for other people in general.
Probably means we're doomed as a podcast since we're not creating any drama, but hopefully some people will be interested.
No, it's probably going to be dramatic for anybody that's listening, which I'm already expecting it. That's going to find something we said or did today offensive. Heck, probably for some people, the fact that we brought up the title of the book, they're probably like, "Brrr!" That's
reaction. Really, I mean, we obviously agree with each other on a lot of issues and topics, so we'll see if we'll have to get some people in here that don't agree.
Oh yeah, I already have. We do have guests lined up in the future. That I do have a troll lined up for us.
She's to figure out where we're gonna.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll squeeze them all in. We'll create like some stadium seating behind us.
Volunteering my house to house these large amounts of interviewees.
No, just one. Not like we're gonna have it's not gonna be like when that was.
We'll all crowd around this tiny table in our single microphone so that we can have a conversation.
Yes. We can have stadium seating back here, so they'll be kind of sitting above us just a little bit. No, I agree. I mean, we do, and I mean, there's times we have a little debate, but I will say, I know the truths that I try to make my decisions off of all the time, and however, because of my openness, I admittedly can get swayed to believe and go along with something in the moment. That also might be years and years of being in sales, being like, yeah, you're right, whatever, buy this.
It's the emotion too, right? Like it's when something hits you emotionally, then you can build a connection to the topic.
Yes,
right?
and it's besides the emotion. I am easily swayed, and not swayed. I'm impressed with people's passion, regardless sometimes of where they're going with it. Because I'm like,
obviously, passion's like a big turn off.
Really? How are you, my friend? I'm like the ultimate passionate person.
I'm kidding, mostly.
I know.
Mostly.
But not really.
No,
no, I mean, this is why this is gonna be good. I swear to God. But if I offended you by saying God,
and hopefully eventually the dog won't be barking. But
well, we're on location, in a very real house.
He just has something he wants to say.
What? Oh yeah, we have freedom of speech in this house, and Biscuit had to say something, and he's pissed that the door is shut. It's pretty much what he's. And there's no food on the other side of the door, I'm guessing. He's very food motivated. So I think that's wrapping it up for today. Now, I do want to throw it out there for anybody that does listen to this episode or is listening to this episode. What do you think? What do you have to say? We want you to, if you're liking what you're hearing, we want to hear your feedback. We welcome it all. You heard my philosophy: open to everything, attached to nothing. And if I get offended by what you say, I'll definitely take a beat, like I said.
If we ever get people to comment enough, it's something we would probably talk about.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a future episode, right?
Yeah.
Especially if people are. Especially like a couple of ways. If there's consistently a opposing viewpoint to something we said, that certainly would be what we'd want to talk about.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We definitely and we
new
want to
ways of
welcome
thinking
like
about it.
realistic, like people want to have a conversation and like a debate. Not people being, assholes and just picking on like my eyebrows taller than the other one or some shit, and this boob's bigger than that boob, whatever.
Well, yeah, I'm sure there'll be plenty of trolly comments, but that's if
just
people want to have,
we're not gonna address that shit.
We're interested in, free thought conversations.
Yes,
that because that was what needs to happen, right? Well, we need to be. Not to use the term, but this would be a safe space for any type of conversation you would want to have. But there's no way for you to avoid anything.
Yes.
Safe in the right that, you won't be hated for saying something. If I have a problem with it, I'll bring it up and we can talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we, with that being said, we and I, we're trying to create like the why and the intention of doing this. Now, it did start from like we just enjoy conversation with each other. We've been friends for 20 years and
desperately hoping somebody else enjoys it too.
Yeah, and if they do, great. If they don't, we're having a good time, and it feels like it will always have this to look back on, which is cool as friends. But the other side of my personal journey of self-development, growth mindset, mindfulness, getting to know who I am and how I affect anybody I am connected with, which technically we're all connected. I believe we're all one. But it's just coming from the idea of, we have free thought, we have our own opinions, but I like the idea of this podcast being the intention of, we want to be a conduit for things that we come across, we see on television shows, we read in books, we hear on podcasts, information and knowledge that excites us and makes us want to talk about it. And if we feel it's something that is important to us, we want to be a conduit for that information. So we might not always be the ones originating content. I like the idea of being, and I'm completely okay with this. Like,
we're not going to be like copying anybody's work.
No.
But, our content is original. We're talking about another topic that was, originated, I guess, by somebody else. But.
Yeah, the point was that we're taking somebody else's information, and even though maybe this would never be a book you'd ever look up that would ever come across you, maybe you're not in a circle of people that are always recommending books, but we want to be that conduit, that place you can go to, that we're going to have different topics. This one was a little more serious, but because we're trying to kind of get a baseline for where we're coming from as individuals doing this, so you can kind of see what we believe in and where we stand with our principles and our personal truths. But I just want to be a conduit for the things that we learn, because there's a lot of people, there's millions of people that they pour their heart and soul into the framing their thoughts, studying, and fighting to get their words out there, whether in whatever medium they're going to use. And I love taking it in and really assessing it and thinking about it. And I like taking notes and studying and trying to do our homework like we're doing, and bringing that material to whoever's listening. So I'm okay, just so understand where I like that. I think that needs it, because this is information that maybe, like, I'm a huge fan of, Ed Milet's podcast, but there's a ton of people like, who the fuck is Ed Milet? But exactly. But I religiously listen to this man. But I love that he talks to everybody, and I would like get information from people. I've learned of tons of books and people and speakers, and because of him, and it's led me on all these different paths of learning. So I'm like, gosh, I want to be like that. I'm not famous. He's like a multi-billionaire. He's an amazing person, but I know we're not anybody necessarily special, but we are people that do read. We're well read. We study. We like to do our homework. We have our opinions, and we want to get it out there to people that want to be a part of it. So
that was a little long.
Sorry. That's how
I would just
the coffee I drank at 3:00 is kicking in.
I would say I'm here. I don't know. I don't want to inflate my own opinion, but I just don't feel like I see people expressing opinions similar to mine in a way that I do, and I'm hoping other people may feel that, or I'm not necessarily hoping, I'm just thinking other people may feel the same way. And so hopefully, I'd like to get discussions happening. I don't know. I'm interested in learning. That's yes. And sometimes I think it's unfortunate that it's hard to learn from each other anymore these days. And I would hope that some people see what we are doing and might be willing to have some tough conversations with us.
Courageous conversations. Brene Brown.
There you go.
Speaking
of serious episodes, because I'm pretty sure our next episode is the opposite of serious.
This is the yes, yes, it is, and it's because it's our friend.
Something we enjoy.
We do enjoy, and I don't even know why or where it stemmed from. You probably remember better than me. He's got a memory like an elephant. I don't. I just remember. I'm like, yeah. So, do you want me to introduce it? Do you want to? Okay. I've got it all ready here. Yeah. So, for next time, and this could go either way. We're going to be talking about the 1981 Canadian adult animated science fantasy anthology film. It really does deserve that title. Heavy metal. But not only heavy metal.
I assume it's going to end up South Park and animation in general is probably what we're going to end up talking about.
Yes, because we actually loved this movie. I don't even remember how we ever got introduced. I don't remember, but we love this movie. But I guess back in it was South Park episode 12. I'm sorry, season 12, episode 13. Air date March 26, 2008 was when apparently we saw this.
Titled Major Boobage.
Yes, where they
2008. So the first time. So then
or did we see it after that?
I'm sure we both had seen it originally another time.
Yeah.
And then we were watching it because I didn't live here till 2010. When we really got into this was after I lived here.
That's maybe true.
Yeah.
Maybe we were rewatching it going, wait a minute, holy shit. I think that's probably what was happening because of all the many times of rewatching. Well, I think South Park.
I don't know if I realized that because my dad had a bunch of heavy metal comics. Oh. And so I think I think it was the song. I think we got into the song.
I think it was the song. And then, and then we were like, where did this come from? And I think that led to...
Ticket to midnight. We call it heavy metal. Yeah, so anyways, that is the next show.
That is our next show. So we hope you tune in to next time. So again, I'm Cynthia Calori.
I'm Nicholas Wilson. If you like what we've had to say, please subscribe and tune in. We're going to try and be posting, as of now, I think the goal is at least twice a month.
Yes.
I know that's like nothing compared to what a lot of other people
Well,
post, but we're starting
get
out.
there.
We're getting started.
We're getting started. And
So the goal right now is twice a month, hopefully more.
yes.
Let us know what you think. Let us know, if there's a topic you'd like us to discuss. Honestly, if there's something that you think you might have to add, I wouldn't be fully opposed to exploring the option of bringing other people in to discuss. So let us know. Other than that,
We'll see you next time.
have a great day.
Peace out.